What's in your wallet and what will life generally cost you in the coming year? That is a question at this moment every year. Your leaders calculating and presenting their county and city budget plans. For Miami-Dade's mayor, it's a tough love approach to next year's spending with a projected $402 million hole to make up for.
We are experiencing losses in state and federal revenue and increased demands for our services and the rising costs of goods and services that affect our government just like they affect all of us.
A perfect storm, says the mayor, including in Miami-Dade 5 constitutional departments newly independent from County Hall, but still part of its budget. Elections, tax collector, property appraiser, clerk of court, and the budget big kahuna, the Miami-Dade's Sheriff's Department. The plan allocates about $50 million, an 8.5% increase from the last police department budget. The county's elected sheriff now wants an 11% increase, about $93 million.
I have already submitted a responsible budget that includes reductions. Let me be clear, I'm not requesting additional enhancements. I'm asking that you fund a budget that meets the financial obligations established prior to the existence of the sheriff's office.
A lot of voices in the mix to decide the final numbers, including yours, if you like, in hearings leading up to the final vote 1 month from today, September 4th. Miami-Dade Mayor Daniella Levine Cava is in the center of that storm and with us today from an event in Homestead. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning, Glenna. Pleasure always.
Thank you. So the budget is right there online. Anybody could look into it and read it line by line. I want to talk a little bit about big picture and especially a lot of the controversial components that have been bubbled up with you this morning. $13 billion, zeroing in on the Sheriff's Department, because that is the bulk of the budget and a very big deal. Transit and some fee increases, especially eliminating some social services like senior meals, and also granting, especially to the World Cup and FIFA, tens of millions of dollars. That's really getting a lot of attention. I'm setting the plate for you here. So let's talk about public safety first and the Sheriff's Department. You are very far apart from Sheriff Rosie Cordero Stutz and what she is requesting. How did you come up with your proposal?
Well, thanks, Glenna. And we have been running this police department for over 60 years now, the new constitutional office. We have increased in my administration 8% year over year on average. And so we know that we can run this department with those resources. So we projected what we thought was a reasonable and realistic increase. And we hope that we'll be able to get to an agreement on that. Public safety is always going to be number one. We understand that. And we are considered one of the safest metropolitan areas in the entire country. So we have a great track record and we don't want to do anything to compromise that.
So in the sheriff's presentation, she was talking about I think it was a $63 million ticket item was actually contractual raises and other staffing fees that sort of comes with this year, having nothing to do with anybody's decision, but in the contract. Is that something that you are on board with?
All of the contractual agreements with the unions were negotiated and approved by our commission. And of course, our current sheriff was part of the leadership team at the time in the department. And all of our law enforcement officials received necessary cost of living increases over time, which had been delayed previous to those contracts being negotiated. So this is all part of the reasonable growth due to cost of living and is incorporated into our projections, of course.
So when the Sheriff's Department and the other 4 constitutional offices separated from the county, is that something that is sort of apples to apples now? Or now that they're independent, are they growing? Do they need administrative staff that the county no longer provides? Why isn't this an apples to apples kind of measure?
Yeah, so the tax collector had unfunded mandates, the Department of Motor Vehicles. So we understand that is a great cost increase. And of course, he gets his funds off the top as a commission, 2% across all the funds that he collects. So he's able to utilize those dollars for the necessary required new responsibilities. The sheriff, like some of the others, don't own their assets. The assets are still owned by general county government. So in terms of general operation, it should be more or less equivalent. Yes, there may be some additional administrative support staff, but again, we increased their budget by over 8%, whereas other departments within the county are going down as much as 10 to 20%. So we did do a cost shift in that sense. We recognize constitutionals are independent now, but based on the calculations of what it takes to run that department, we have not cut funding. I think that's the number one point to make. Not at all. We continue to increase it year over year.
You know, I want to, before we get back to the actual budget, it kind of dawns on me that the constitutional officers, for the first time elected in Miami-Dade last November, you are in a nonpartisan seat. County government traditionally in this county has been nonpartisan, but the constitutional officers were all in partisan races and they are all Republicans. Is there an element of party politics in these budget negotiations now that Miami-Dade residents should be looking for?
I hope not, Glenna, and I will tell you that we've been able to negotiate effectively with all the other constitutional offices, so I'm very hopeful we'll resolve this one as well. We're all here for the same purpose, to provide for the needs of our residents. We understand we're all drawing from the same pot, and that is creating challenges, and that is why we have a $402 million gap. That's a big, big part of it, to be sure that we can accommodate those new constitutional offices.
I want to talk about the cuts to some of the charitable grants. I mean, it's almost so ironic for people who have known you throughout your career. I met you when you were an attorney in social work, and that is kind of your whole background. The $40 million in cuts to social services and nonprofits and charities, senior meals, I'm guessing that had to be a really difficult decision, but why there?
We looked at what were the essential services that our county residents and businesses can expect and rely upon. The trash collection, water and sewer, transit, in this case, housing, because the housing costs are so astronomical. And we did double over the last few years the amount of money we've been able to spend on building housing that people can afford. So those are some of the things that are just fundamental. And we had to find $402 million in cuts. There are only a few departments that can even absorb those cuts, the general fund budgets. There's a whole host of them we can't touch. The airport, the seaport, water and sewer, our fire department, our libraries, they all have their own dedicated source of revenue that cannot be tapped to help us with that $402 million gap. So we were very limited in what we could look to. So we looked really to what are the core county services, and it pains me deeply, deeply. As you say, I am a social worker. I have funded so many programs, and a lot of it was done with one-time funding. Glenna, we had those dollars from the federal government, the rescue plan, and we did warn everybody, this is not multi-year funding. But some funding that we have traditionally had simply is gone. It's not just the cuts we're making, the state made cuts, substantial cuts in this budget year that has impacted our cultural arts and our nonprofits, among others. So, and our transit makes up 13% of that budget shortfall. But yet, basic transit service, which has increased and people are relying upon, we've grown from the 15th to the 10th largest transit system in the country. That's unprecedented. While other departments around the country are cutting services, we are maintaining all of the basic services because people are relying on them to get to work, to their medical appointments, to school, and so on. And we did not think it was wise, prudent, thoughtful to cut in those basic service areas. So we had to find $402 million, and we are so sad to have to cut into things that people really want, as do we.
So I want to bring something up that it will be zero surprise to you because people are really this is really starting to bubble up to be a big controversy. There is the World Cup games coming, already controversial on face value that the county is offering subsidies in various levels. We've spoken to the CEO here on this program. $46 million in subsidies to the World Cup coming in the summer. I mean, $46 million and the charitable cuts at 40 almost seem like, I don't know, I'm not a budget woman, but you can take one and just fill the other if that's possible. But can you make a case now for all the things you just said of giving what may be up to $60 million with the marquee event policy that the county has to sports billionaires for a World Cup Summer Games that will be here anyway. That is a very a tough
Yes.
kind of calculation for the county to swallow.
So Glenna, the bid for the World Cup was made in the previous administration. And once we're selected, we do have an obligation to contribute. Now we have, and that was approved overwhelmingly by the board. It's the board that makes that decision. And then the increase also was overwhelmingly supported by the board. I do know some of the board members are asking, commissioners are asking to revisit the additional amount that was awarded in the spring. And so that may in fact come before the commission. And indeed, if they decide that they want to roll it back, then potentially those are some dollars that can be invested. I'm not talking about the total rollback, but potentially the add-on is what some of the commissioners are saying they want to review. But again, it was overwhelmingly approved. It was not my recommendation. It was overwhelmingly approved by the board.
Would you do anything differently in hindsight now that we're here with such a big budget gap?
Well, as to the World Cup, and by the way, to clarify, the funds don't go to FIFA. They go to our local team of local leaders who are responsible to help raise money and put together the programming here at home. So it is a locally funded endeavor. Look, I've said in my budget memo, change memo, that it could have impact on services.
When you go in front of the commission, I mean, this is going to be stirred around for the next month. Public can have input as well at County Hall. The commission at the moment floated the flat millage, and because of property values, taxes will be a bit higher for people. And that may change too, because I think there's a lot coming down the pike if you listen to commissioners putting out their press releases right now. Would you advocate for lowering the millage and making, that would make the budget gap a bit wider? Do you foresee that as a possibility?
No, lowering the millage would only cause us to go back and cut more services. So we were very strongly pushing for a flat millage. We were able to lower the millage rate 2 years in a row, and we are at the 1982 level. So we rolled back the rates extraordinary amount, and this is not the year to reduce the rolls, to reduce the rate. But nor do we think it's responsible in this very high cost of living time to increase the millage. So if we had more money, of course, we wouldn't have to cut all these programs. So, there are choices, but we think it's not the time to raise the millage, even though we do have this budget shortfall. But nor is it time to lower it.
A really busy and important month, and I know you all urge everyone who has a stake in this to come out and voice their opinions. Mayor, it's great to have you on the program. I appreciate your time, as always.
Thank you so much to you and to your listeners. Appreciate you.